Welcome back to our series on Catholicism and public life. Knowing that Catholics are obliged, through our baptism, to be leaven in the world and participants in public life, and knowing that public life means much more than simply voting, we might wonder what sort of guidelines our faith provides for our public participation. Our faith cannot and should not be reduced to a set of moral claims. Being Christian is not simply about being a good person, and it's not simply about avoiding sin. And don't get me wrong, both of those things are good and important. But Christianity is about a person, Jesus Christ, and the relationship that he invites us into. That being said, the reality of Christ has moral implications. We know this from Christ's own words and from the early witness of the apostles and disciples. Christ changes how we see everything. And to follow after Christ means to see the world as Jesus sees it. Over the centuries, the church has thought about what it means to be Christian, and certain aspects have become foundational to our notion of Christianity and the public realm. These we call principles of Catholic social teaching, or Catholic social doctrine. They're truths that arise immediately from the implications of Christ's paschal mystery. They cannot be ignored or overlooked by anyone hoping to follow after Jesus Christ. And they provide guideposts for Catholics and people of goodwill who wish to build a world in which it is easier to be good. We typically describe 4 of these principles. The first principle is the dignity of the human person. Each person has been loved into existence by God. And Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh and second person of the Trinity, died for that person. Jesus sees that person as worth his own blood, his own life. As Christians, we need to ask, what is that person worth to us? Are there any ways in which we might demean that person or look at that person less than Christ looks at them? Because of the person's innate, irrevocable dignity that arises from the love of God, we Catholics must be opposed to direct threats on that person's dignity. Torture, unjust war, genocide, racism, the death penalty, human trafficking, abortion are all opposed to the reverence that we must show to those loved by God. The second principle arises from the first, subsidiarity. Church documents say that it is impossible to promote the dignity of the person without showing concern for families, groups, associations, local realities, which make effective social growth possible. We are social beings, made in the image of the triune God, who is relationship. In our public life, it means that large institutions should be at the service of smaller, more local institutions. We cannot be persons without relating to each other, and we need to foster strong relationships between each other. We see this in Pope Francis's desire for the Curia in Rome to operate in the service of the local church, of our diocese, and a diocese across the world. And that the center power should not be a powerhouse that dictates and dominates the small realities. Nevertheless, these large institutions also exist so that when the small local institution cannot adequately protect human dignity and advance the common good, these can. The third principle is something we've mentioned many times in this series already. It's called the common good. It's the sum total of social conditions which allow people, as individuals and as groups, to reach their fulfillment more easily and more fully. The things that allow for someone to thrive: food, shelter, a right to life, equality, justice, healthcare, a fair wage, education. These are all aspects that are essential to a person's ability to function and thrive. Our common good means that what affects one affects all. When one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. This is true with regard to the environment as well as to the economy. Exploiting persons or nature give offense to God, the Father of all. Finally, our last essential pillar of Catholic social doctrine is solidarity. We are our brothers and sisters' keepers. We have all been given the commandment by the Lord to love one another as He has loved us. We have an obligation to look out for those who are oppressed throughout the world, those who suffer across the seas and in our own neighborhood. The Catechism states, "Those who are oppressed by poverty are the object of a preferential love on the part of the Church, which since her origin, and in spite of the failings of many of her members, has not ceased to work for their relief, defense, and liberation through numerous works of charity." Solidarity leads to a vital aspect of Catholic moral teaching. We have a preferential concern for the poor. As we participate in public life and form a society in which it is easier to be good, we work especially for justice for those who suffer. Christ heard the cries of the crowd and His heart was moved. We too respond like Christ. You may have noticed a certain frustration in these four principles. While they guide our actions and give a direction to them, they don't give concrete descriptions of what we should do to pursue them. In our final video, we will talk about how the Church desires us to integrate these principles, and especially what it means to follow our conscience. Until then, God bless.